Today's guest grew up casting in Colorado's Eagle River Valley, joined Team USA as a teen, and now tests his dry fly game against the best anglers on the planet. From the freestone creeks of the Rockies to the ultra-technical beats of Europe. In this episode, we break down what it really takes to succeed with dry flies under pressure, why a 10-foot 3-weight with a 2-weight line might be your next best friend, to how a longer leader and a hook cast can change everything for you today. By the end of this one, you're going to rethink what's possible with 7X and 8X tippet. You're going to find out how to fish even when nothing's rising, and you're going to see why the Euro approach to dries might just outfish that chubby Chernobyl. Jack Arnot, Team USA angler and dry fly master, is here to break down what it really takes to succeed with surface flies, especially when the water is technical and the pressure is on. You're going to find out how he scouts new rivers without seeing a single rise, the rod and line setup that we talked about earlier, and why most anglers are fishing flies that look too much like the rest of the flies. All right, there's so much on this one. You're going to love it. I know it. I want to give a big shout out. This episode of Traveled is presented by Yellowstone Teton Territory, host of this year's World Championships for the youth and the women's team, and the host for next year's World Championships for the senior team. You're going to find out how to connect here. We've got some great stuff going. Check out Yellowstone Teton Territory right now, wetflyswing.com/Teton. All right, here he is, Jack Arnot. You can find him at Jack Arnot on Instagram. How you doing, Jack?
Good. Thank you guys for having me. Really appreciate it.
Yeah. This is going to be a good one today. We're going to talk about at least one topic today, talking about dry fly fishing competition. Specifically, we've been getting some questions from some of the listeners about that. You're an expert. I mean, it really doesn't get any higher level than I think what you have under your belt. We'll talk about some of the championships and Team USA. We always love digging into that. So we're going to get into all that today. I know you're traveling as well, and I want to hear an update. But take us back real quick to the beginning, right to the start. Like you've been doing fly fishing most of your life, or how'd you get into it?
Yeah. I actually got into fishing through my grandpa, and that was, fishing power bait on the bank, spin fishing, and just quickly developed a love for fishing in general. And then I got a fly rod from my parents when I was about 12 or 13. And I would run down to the creek after middle school with my school clothes on and just fish till dark. And I immediately fell in love with fly fishing.
Where was that? Where'd you, when you were 12, where were you living at?
Yeah, so I grew up in the Vail Valley, in Eagle, Colorado. So lots of fishing opportunities up there, and actually the spot of 2 world championships up there. So it's usually pretty good fishing.
Oh, right. So that's where some of the worlds have been. They've actually been held at your hometown.
Yeah. We had a youth worlds, which I was able to participate in, and then we had senior worlds a couple of years after that.
Senior worlds, and I always confuse myself on this because I think golf, but seniors is the younger of the older guys.
Yeah, a little confusing, but the youth team, I think you age out at 18, and then the seniors team, I think, is like 18 to 50, and then the masters team is 50 plus, from my understanding.
50 plus, yeah. So, and are you now on the seniors team?
Yeah. So I am currently on the seniors team. I was on the youth team from about the age of 14 to I think around 17. And then when I went to college, I think I joined the senior team my sophomore year of college. So it's been, I think, like 4 or 5 years, give or take.
Yeah, 4 or 5 on the senior team.
Yeah, correct.
Yeah, that's right. So who's the current, does it vary a little bit, but who is the current senior team right now as we speak, 2025?
Yeah, so it's me, Cody Bergdorf, Mike Kamara, Devin Olson, and Michael Bradley. And then we're taking an alternate this year, which that'll be Austin Shoemaker.
Oh, yeah, Austin. Okay. And
then there's 15 guys.
Oh, there's 15 what?
Yeah, there's 15 guys that make up the rest of the U.S. fly fishing team. And then the 5 get selected or make it in points for the world's team.
Oh, gotcha. Okay, so there's 5 that make it to actually go compete, and then there's 15 others that are there just as alternate support, that sort of thing?
Yeah, yeah, on Team USA, everyone's got a shot, so it's a pretty awesome group.
And who out of that group? Who's the oldest out of that group there?
Oh man, I think Evan Olson is ranking at the top these days.
Yeah, I was gonna say, yeah, I thought Devin, because all those names you threw out there are all people that I'm not totally familiar with. In fact, I think Devin's the only person we've had on the podcast, so it's cool.
Yeah,
It's cool that, yeah,
I've always usually been the youngest guy around. I think Mike Kamara is about same age as me, so we got some younger guys on the team these days.
okay. And how is the team doing these days? Like, what was your last championship world, and what's coming up here?
Yeah, the last World Championship we had in France, we actually earned a bronze medal as a team, which is a pretty big deal. It's one of the few medals the U.S. has won ever in the competition world scene. Super hard championship. I think it pushed us all mentally and physically. And then I leave in 2 days to go to the Czech Republic, and that'll be 32 countries there.
Wow. So Czech, yeah. So you're leaving right around the corner for now. It's 2025 as we're speaking. So, and are they typically held about this time of year usually?
It depends. Most times it's in the spring to summer time frame.
Gotcha. Okay, so you're heading out. How is when you head out to these on these events, is it kind of like you have no idea how well things are going to go, or do you ever have kind of an idea?
Yeah, some places, like when I went to Slovakia, I think 2 years ago for Worlds, like Devon had already been there, Lance had already been there. They fished a world championship there, like I think it was like 8 or 12 years prior. Devon's also fished a Worlds in the Czech Republic before, and we're lucky enough to have the ladies, a world fly fishing team compete over there and the masters team compete over there last year. So I feel like we have a pretty good handle on things, which is not the norm because we usually have to do a lot of traveling.
Right, you do, and I think this year the youth and the women are in kind of Idaho Falls, right? So they're back on our home turf. And then are you guys going to be back in 26? Are the seniors going to be there in the same area?
Yeah, yeah, that's kind of how the schedule is seeming to take shape these days. But yeah, we'll be on home turf, which will be awesome. No long flight abroad.
Yeah, right. No, that's going to be great because and for you, it sounded like when you won when you were in the youth, was that in your hometown? How did that all come to be? How did you, maybe take us back there real quick. How did you get it connected to Team USA?
Yeah, a little blast from the past. It was really by a freak accident. We went up to a lake called Sylvan Lake to go fish. And I think my mom may have heard there was like some fly fishing event going on, so we rolled up there, and it was the youth team. I think doing the America's Cup or some form of nationals, and one of the kids' moms, Gabe Witosh, who was a world champion, she just came over to me and was like, "Hey, you have a great cast, and do you like fly fishing?" And I was like, "Yeah, it's all I do." And she started talking to my mom, and then I think a couple weeks later, my mom sent me out to North Carolina by myself to go attend a youth team clinic, which they
Uh-huh.
hold quite a bit to find new talent and sharpen everyone up. And yeah, I just went out to North Carolina and met some awesome friends that I'm still friends with, and it took off from there.
Who were the teachers at that clinic?
Yeah, yeah, my old coach Paul Bork,
Oh yeah.
great guy, and led us to quite a few medals on the Youth World Championship. I think multiple back-to-back years, if I remember correctly.
Yeah. Right. Do you guys still keep a connection now that you've been in the seniors for a while with the current youth team? Because we've had Josh on, and recently talked to Jess Westbrook about things.
Nice.
Yeah, and it's been cool. I mean, I think won I think two, right, recently. Do you know the kids that are, or the kids that are on there?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Cody and I are actually doing a lake clinic for them this summer when we get back from Worlds to make sure they're in tip-top shape for their World Championship. But yeah, mainly know all the youth kids, and I try to give back to the program that I had so many amazing mentors growing up, so it's really the
Yeah.
least I can do.
Right, that's right, and probably some of those mentors are people that we'd probably all have heard of. Some of
Yeah,
the names out
a
there,
lot of them.
past, yeah, past competitors, right? We always go. I mean, and you grew up in Colorado, so I mean that's obviously a super hot spot for fly fishing, kind of a mecca. Is it also? Are there a lot of Team USA people that came out of Colorado, or currently, or in the past?
Yeah, so when I first started, I was kind of in no man's land. It was a really East Coast dominated pool of kids on the youth team, and I was the only one in Colorado for a long time. But as the sport's grown and everything else has grown, yeah, there's been I think we have one of the harder regions competition wise, just because we have so many people who competition fish here,
Oh,
youth,
right.
adult, women, everybody.
Yeah. It's awesome hearing the stories because now that we've been putting these episodes together, we hear how it's changed from all the way back to Jack Dennis, the story of him starting,
Yeah,
you know what I
yeah.
mean? Like when it was this kind of crap, whatever you call it, kind of show, right? Where
Not
people
as
grab,
organized.
not as organized, I guess. Show that's probably maybe not the best way to say it, but it came to now where it's like super organized, right? You got nationals and people compete up to a level, and then they choose them to go to the next, and then eventually you get the best in the country for the worlds, and then you got all of these clinics and everybody supporting everybody. It seems like it's really super organized, and you're seeing, USA winning now, right? Which in the past that wasn't happening. So it must be working.
Yeah,
Does it feel pretty good now?
it felt really awesome to get a senior medal. I think that's one of the hardest things you can do, is get a medal, and especially a team medal.
Hmm.
At a world championship, it takes, everyone being dialed, and you have to do it as a team, which we preach that a lot. But yeah, it's, I think in years past, we were always playing catch up to some of the European teams, and I really feel confident that, we're going to have a really strong team for the next few years.
Yeah, perfect. Well, I think part of this, you always, whenever we talk about Team USA competition, people always think Euro nymphing. I feel like that's always, and it's such a killer effective method that there's no question, it's awesome. But there's other things you guys do, right? So it's not just Euro nymphing. So we've been getting some listeners that have been asking about dry fly fishing. In fact, one person reached out just yesterday, I think, and was like, "Hey, man, I'd love to hear something about competition dry fly fishing. Like, what is that?" And so, how do you talk about dry fly? If you were coaching somebody, maybe the youth talking dry flies, where do you start on that, or how would you describe it? How is it different than say just the normal dry fly fishing?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. I guess to kind of touch on the broader point here is a lot of people do think competition fishing is just Euro nymphing, and it couldn't be further from the truth. We do lock style lake fishing and bank fishing. That's techniques taken from England, Scotland, the Irish. Those are all predominantly pretty solid lake fishing countries and countries who excel well. We need to know how to fish streamers on a tightline Euro rig. You need to dry fly fish. So it takes everything to do comps. You cannot get away with just Euro nymphing. You would do very poorly if that's all you were doing. So yeah, it takes everything, and I think dry fly fishing is the pinnacle of that. I think that's what separates mediocre comp anglers from really good comp anglers, because quite frankly, we're kind of in a nymph dominated world, especially in the comp scene. So if you can dry fly fish, you will make it. And I've had a lot of sessions at Worlds in comps where I've won sessions just fishing dry flies, while other people might be nymphing. Yeah.
Yep, right. And is the dry fly selection, has that changed the dry flies you're using? You hear a lot about CDC maybe now more than before. But what's that look like? If you had to say your box, do you have is it similar to where, the Euro nymphs, you got all these patterns that everybody knows about? Or what's your fly box look like for the dries?
Yeah. Stuff that you're never going to find in the US, like not in
Oh,
fly
really?
shops. Yeah, it's completely, I'd say we take a lot of inspiration from French style dry fly fishing and Spanish style dry fly fishing. Those guys are the best dry fly anglers in the world, especially competition wise. They're insane. I'd say the Spanish are really good as well. But that's how I first learned about how to fish dries and comps, was from David Arkai in 2016 for Youth World Championship, where we got a silver medal, and it kind of flipped my world upside down. Um, and that's where things started clicking. I was like, okay, this is how you need to dry fly fish.
Really? So you were learning from like actually watching other competitors from other country, like the Spanish and French, what they were doing?
Yeah, he was our guide.
Oh, right, yeah. So you have a guide. So you had a Spanish guide that was showing you, like, giving you pointers.
Yeah, and he's gone on to win multiple world championship team and individual titles. But yeah, I kind of adopted some of that style from them. That's where patterns started clicking for me.
Hmm. So what is it that David was doing or teaching, or what were you seeing from him that you weren't seeing in other, and that you might not see just in the U.S., other places?
Yeah, absolutely. So in the US, we have this like stigma of like, you're gonna go down to your fly shop, you're gonna grab a 9 foot tapered leader, and you're gonna fish it on a fly line that's probably way too overweighted for your rod, and it's probably a 5 weight, and life is good, right?
Right. Fast action too, right? The rod's going to be super fast action.
Yeah, our setup is like the complete opposite of that. So, I mean, there are situations where I'll fish a 4 weight or 5 weight rod. Can't say I've ever done it in comps, but I usually start with a 3 weight rod. I fish a Diamondback Aeroflex. Joe Goodspeed and I are really good friends. He sent me some of the first models of the Diamondback fly rod, so I talk with him about fly rod design and whatnot. But I'll start with a 10 foot 3 weight. That's a big factor in my mind is rod length. So most guys in the US are probably fishing a 9 foot rod or even a sub 9 foot rod, and you're hurting yourself because the rod's an extension of your arm, and 10 foot really is a sweet spot for me. And I think most competitors and people who are pretty dialed with dry fly fishing are at least fishing a 9.6 or a 10 foot rod.
10 foot rod. And is this a similar rod, would you say, to your typical 10 foot or 10.5 foot Euro nymphing rod, or is it totally different?
Yeah, I'd say a lot different. Like there's true dry fly rods. There's a lot of European companies that make rods specifically for dry fly fishing. They're all great. I try to keep my rods all the same. So like if I fished sage rods, then I'd find a sage dry fly rod that worked and a nymph rod. I do that with Diamondback. I have my Diamondback lake rods, river rods, and dry fly rods, and that's what I use for consistency.
Gotcha. And the Diamondback fly rod is something I'm not as familiar with, although we've had Joe. It's Joe, right? Joe is it Joe or Joe? Goodspeed.
Joe Goodspeed, yeah.
Yeah, Joe. Yeah, we've had him on quite a while ago. We had Joe on. I think it was when he was working for one of the other bigger companies. I can't remember who
Thomas and
that was.
Thomas, probably. Yeah.
Yeah, Thompson Thomas, I believe. Yeah. So did he? So he moved and now he's with Diamondback. Is that? Tell us about that company a little bit. Are they focused on specifics?
Yeah, he kind of revamped an old company. Joe is one of the best rod designers in the U.S., bar none. Incredibly talented fisherman as well. And yeah, kind of took a brand and put his own twist on things, and the rods seem to work really well for competition anglers, and that usually trickles down into the average rec angler as well. So yeah, it's been pretty awesome to watch his success.
Yeah, because I think Diamondback. I mean, that company's been around for quite a while, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, because I remember them from I think quite a few years ago, hearing more about them. So they took a little something change with the company, and then then you get one of the best designers on there, and he can change the kind of like the Tim Ray Jeff or any of those other guys, right? They can do some big changes.
Yeah, it's been pretty cool to watch, and he was a awesome mentor of mine growing up. So nothing but good things to say about him.
That's awesome. Nice. So there you go. So there's a good start. It's the rod. So you're using more like a 10 foot 3 weight for your dries. Um,
10 foot 3 weight, 10 foot four
yeah.
weight, yeah, somewhere in that range.
Okay. And then what is the line? Are the lines also different if we keep on this track like we are talking? Is it David? What's David's last name?
David Arkai,
Okay.
that's his full name.
Gotcha. Okay. So what was so they were, and what about lines? Talk about that a little bit. Lines leader. How are they doing
Yeah,
different than we
so
do?
it's the most important thing, and we've kind of put our own adaptations on all this stuff. So in
Yeah.
the comp world, stuff moves very fast. Like one thing you may be doing one year is not the thing you'll be doing the next year or even month to month. So what I've ended up on is basically underweighting all these lines. So the way the fly line manufacturing game has gone in the past 10 to 15 years is manufacturers have totally overweighted these fly lines as rods get a little more stiff, a little more
Mhm.
fast, right? So you think you might be buying a 5 weight fly line, but might be more towards a 6 weight fly line or 6.5 weight fly line. So we're going the opposite direction of that. So I'm fishing 2 weight fly lines. At the very max, I'm fishing a 3 weight fly line, like for dry flies. Like that
Isn't that
is,
it's so crazy, right? We've talked about this a little bit on the podcast with a few people that have talked about how one of the we had like a couple casting champions actually. Chris Korich, who's the guy who took Maxime McCormick, I think at like 14 or 15 to win the casting, and he went off on the whole thing about how it's this nuclear arms race to faster, 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 and he was saying, man, we're
yeah,
using like 1980s rods to win championships on the casting stuff.
I can believe it. He probably knows a lot more about that area than me, but I can absolutely agree with him on that.
Yeah, but you're saying the same thing. So essentially, you're having to now, instead of getting a 4 weight, you got a 3 weight rod. Instead of getting a 4 weight, just get a 3 weight or you get a rod that bounce. So you're going, and is the line just a typical weight forward line? Anything special there with the actual line?
No, I mean, I'll fish lines, everything from Cortland to Airflow. I think right now I'm on the Airflow 2 weight. Oh man, I don't even remember what it is.
Yeah,
I know on the other rod I have the Cortland 444 Silk in a 2 or 3 weight. It's, you know, when you get to a line of that size, tapers start getting a little more irrelevant on what they're doing
right.
because it's such a small line. But
It's so
uh,
thin.
the,
Yeah.
yeah, there are tweaks and differences which with each line. Like my airflow lands a little softer than my Cortland, and like I'll bring out my Cortland line if I know it's going to be a little windy for the day and I need to punch out a little more line. So just those kind of minute details.
Yeah. What is a 10-foot 3 weight versus a 10-foot 4 weight versus say a 10-foot 5 weight? What is the biggest thing you get with going lighter on the dry fly
It's
rod?
it's tippet protection, like with these, what we'll get into the more terminal side with like leaders and tippet is I'm fishing 7x, 8x with these dry flies, primarily 7x in Colorado. And there's times where I go out of state and yeah, I'm gonna fish 5x and I'm gonna dry fly fish. But for comps, it's standard 7x for me. But yeah, that's kind of where that's just one piece of the puzzle with dry fly fishing is making sure your line is matching your rod and then is protecting your tippet. And I don't care if it's a 2 weight dry fly rod or a 5 weight or 7 weight dry fly rod. Everything
Yep.
needs to be focused on what size tippet you're fishing.
Gotcha. Okay. Yeah, that makes sense. And if you do have the wrong protection, then you're just gonna break things off, break off your leader, break fish off. Is
Yeah,
that
you're
kind
just going to be breaking off fish. And the reason for the small tippet, I don't like fishing 7x with dry flies. It doesn't excite me very
right?
much, but it's less drag on the water. So the less surface area you have, the better drift you're going to get. And same with the fly line as well. I mean, there's a massive difference between what you can do with a 3 weight fly line in more technical aspects versus what you can do with a 5 weight or 6 weight dry fly line.
Yeah, right. Okay. So that's a big part there. Well, you guys are going to be, I mean, you're probably focusing already on what is the country you're heading out to in a couple days?
Czech Republic.
Yeah, Czech Republic. So as you're heading out there, are you already thinking, knowing kind of what to expect for dry flies? Are you have your gear set up, or is that something that you do when you get there?
Yeah, that's all I've been thinking about for months. Really, the
Yeah.
past year is what I'm gonna do over there. Dry fly fishing, from the sounds of it, is not gonna be the most important thing. There's always surprises when you go to a worlds. Like when we went to France, we thought we would have a little better dry fly fishing over there, and turns out nymphing for these super small spooky fish was really the way to go, or maybe a little dry dropper. But
Mm,
yeah, I don't think dry fly is going to be the thing for Czech Republic, but
yeah.
like you said, there's always surprises.
Yeah, there always is. Well, let's fast forward to, 26 is not too far away. That's probably, I think you guys might be in the July of 26 heading out to Idaho Falls. Have you fished that water? Do you know I'm not sure what you'll be fishing there, but all the Henry's Fork and all that stuff?
Yeah, I've done some regionals out there when I was in high school, so did some comps. Yeah, definitely have fished a couple comps out there. I wouldn't say I know the water like the back of my hand whatsoever.
No, but it is known as a technical. I mean, I think right dry flies. You could definitely fish dry flies. There's the cutthroat, and Henry's Fork is kind of known for that, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I think, that'll come into play. And the main thing is with dry fly fishing and some of the more finesse competition tactics is you just need to get a fish on it. So like if I'm nymphing my session and I have 25 minutes left and I've nymphed all I can nymph, I've dry dropped all I can dry drop, I've streamer fished it up and down, right? And I
Hmm.
see a fish rise in a little corner. I need to be able to go plop one cast on them, catch them, and that's the difference between gold medal, silver medal, first place, seventh place. Like, so there are situations where you're not using it all the time, but you need to be very well versed in what you're doing just for one little snapshot.
So that could make or break it right there. And could that fish be, say, a 10-inch fish that could make or break it if you catch that fish?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I think our legal fish length is somewhere in that range, and it comes down to millimeters. I've lost comps off a couple millimeters.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it's pretty crazy.
It's that tight. How do you do that when, so is the rules, we don't have to go into all of it, but you catch a fish, they're not are they measuring every fish or how's that work?
Yeah, kind of how it works is, there's five venues. Usually a lake is a venue. There's five people on each team, right?
Yeah.
Each teammate goes to a venue and what it kind of looks like. So in the Czech Republic, there will be 32 beats. What a beat is a section of water, and it could be 200 yards long. We've had beats up to a mile and a half long. And that's your section. You're stuck there. It's a random draw on the bus. So you don't know where you're going until you step off the bus and you have a controller with you and they are there to enforce the rules. So there would be 32 controllers on one section of that river and you scope out your beat. You kind of give it hey, that's my A water, that's my B water, do a little mental map of how you want to fish it. And then you catch a fish. They ensure that the fly is in the mouth, so forward of the gill plate. They measure it, and then you sign for your fish. At Worlds, they measure in millimeters. In most comps, we just do centimeters. I think is usually how that works. And then, yeah, there's different point systems on how it all works, but basically at the end of the session, like if you had 25 fish and I had 25 fish, then they would add up the millimeters and then I would beat you.
Gotcha. Okay. So, and if let's take it back on the dry. So you're there, you've got, you see some action. Maybe talk about that. You're going to, let's just take it to stay on the Henry's Fork of that area. If you were going to a new stream, how do you approach a new stream? If you're thinking focusing on dry flies, what's that look like? Are you looking for heads all the time or are you doing anything different than what people would normally be doing?
No, quite the opposite. I'm not looking for rising fish at all. I'd say a good example of this is Cody and I hosted a mini comp on a creek called Clear Creek in our front range of Colorado, and we actually made it a dry fly only comp. So no nymphing, no dry dropping.
Nice.
Everyone was forced to fish a dry fly. I think Cody and I ended up with about 100. I caught somewhere 60, 70 fish. He caught 60, 70 fish. And that was just for one day. And we caught more fish than we would have been nymphing.
All right.
Um, it's a stream we fished quite a bit, but there were no risers the entire day. So I'll use it as kind of like a probing tactic. So if I roll up to a new river and I have no idea what's going on, I'll probably spend the first 15 to 30 minutes dry fly fishing, weather permitting, especially in the summer.
So you will.
I actually, yeah, when I came back from France, I didn't nymph for months. I fished dry flies all the way
God, that's
till
great.
September. Yeah.
So you come in here in the conventional wisdom, or at least for some people, especially here, is like, yeah, if you want to get some action, throw on a nymph, get down to them. But what you're saying is, even without any fish rising, maybe not, there's no hatches. You come up there and what are you looking for on the water? Are you trying to identify? How are you reading the water to find these fish?
Yeah, slack. I mean, slack water, shallow water. I'm looking for stuff people would walk through, step in. Um, like people see a juicy seam and they're like, okay, I'm gonna walk out there. They're walking over so many fish. So I'm looking for kind of like I call it like A, B, and C water. I'm looking for water that doesn't get fished, even with a nymph. Kind of your oddball,
Hmm.
weird kind of nothing water.
Yep. So you might go out to an area and see what looks like, yeah, a seam or something that looks great, and then but you got this slack water maybe on the inside that's kind of slow or kind of whatever. And so you're fishing everything. You're starting off like right in tight. Are you kind of fishing everything, or are you still picking spots within that run or that area to hit?
Yeah, that's a great question. Working it super methodically, so I kind of been trained to use like a grid system. So, you know, if someone were to watch a comp, it might seem a little haphazard what we're doing. Like we're running up and down the river, we're putting a cast here, cast there, and then you slow down and you'll start working a section. But it's the same thing with dry fly fishing. It's like if I catch a fish in ankle deep water and I can see like bigger rocks underneath the water, my mind immediately goes to what else looks like this, right? Or I'm catching fish in knee deep water with a little bit of chop on the surface and there's no big rocks, there's just pebbles. I'm going to start scanning and looking around for stuff that looks similar.
Yeah, I see. Okay. So you and the grid thing is basically you're breaking up wherever you're fishing and you're pretty much hitting everything. You're systematically going through. You're not leaving any stone unturned, right? You're hitting it all.
Um, in a way, yes. I'd say for the water that I'm targeting, yeah, I'm gonna fish the heck out of it. But for water that doesn't need to dry, I'm not gonna fish it at all. That might be, your nymphing water, stuff that deserves subsurface flies.
Yeah. And what would be that water? So you've got dry fly, you're fishing dry fly water. What is the water that's definitely not dry fly water? Is that pretty specific?
Um, yeah, I would say it's like your wave train water, right? It's stuff that's gonna suck your fly in and out a little too quickly. And then, yeah, depending on the water temperature, I mean, when fish eat dries, they tend to gravitate closer to the bank, in my experience, unless it's super, super flat water. But yeah, I'd say stuff that does not deserve dry flies is it's more of a speed issue.
Okay. And what about there's always this interesting thing, and Euro nymphing is so perfect because it's the matching the hatch versus the hot spot, all that stuff. Is dry fly the
Yeah.
same way with comp? Are you thinking about, oh, this is the exact match of this mayfly that's hatching, or what? Talk about that a little bit.
No, yeah, I am way off the beaten path there. I mean, there's a lot of flies I fish. They're colors you don't find in nature, and they're my best performing flies. I kind of break it up into like two sections. Like I have my searching dry flies, and that's stuff that will maybe tell me if a fish is there. One of the flies I can mention is it's popular in Spain. It's called a red baron. And I tie my version of it with fulling mill. It's commercially available, and it's a red dry fly, and it could be a red quill, maybe if you want it to, but it's just a great searching pattern, and it's not a color you see hatching a lot. So that's a good searching pattern. And then, like you said, yeah, there are match the hatch style flies. If there's a BWO hatch coming down the river, I'm not putting on a caddis. I'm not putting on a red quill. I will target fish accordingly.
Yeah, right. Okay. So yeah, you have that part. And the searching patterns, are those typically just what describe that? What is an actual searching pattern and to talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, it's usually a size 16 for me, and they're built with a V-wing platform. So they're split wings, but they're upright. And there's a little bit of glow bright in there for just viewing pleasure, which is just hot thread.
Hmm.
Um, and I'll tie them with synthetic materials. I'll tie them with CDC. Really anything that floats.
Yeah, that floats. Okay. And are these flies typically, are you also it's always again that thing like dry fly, traditional Catskills dry fly versus say a fly that sits more down in the surface film. Is that kind of what types of flies are you using?
Yeah, I don't fish anything with hackle.
Okay, no hackle, yeah.
Yeah, I think that
Why do you think that is? Well, is that just a traditional you think about? Is that one of those just fly fishing traditional things? Because Catskills are beautiful flies, right? Do you? I mean,
yeah.
I know they. I'm sure they work too. But why is it that those flies in the surface are working better, say, at times than these other ones? They're sitting up.
Yeah, I mean, I love traditional dry flies. I really enjoy fly tying. I take a lot of inspiration from older patterns. That's why they're there. But we're in a new age of fly fishing. There's no reason not to be fishing synthetic materials or pushing the envelope on things, especially dry flies that the fish just might not see as often. And I think a good case study of this is Cody and I have both witnessed it. Cody Bergdorf. We've seen fish in Colorado. Like, what's the most popular shop fly in Colorado for the summer? Chubby Chernobyl.
For which one? For dries?
Yeah, like find me a wreck angler or really a lot of people that don't have a chubby Chernobyl in their box.
Yeah, I was just gonna say it's someone we just did a podcast this morning, and the chubby. It's the chubby for sure. That's like the number one dry fly.
Yeah, like that's what people use. And what are they all tied with? They're tied with white wings, right? And how many dry flies do you see in shops tied with your classic white wing? A lot of them, I would say. And fish get smart to those. Like I've seen fish turn off white wing dry flies. I've many times. I've even seen it in my own fishing too. So you switch it up to a gray wing or, blend some colors together and you're off to fooling fish again.
Yeah, so subtle. And are you doing all your tying, getting ready for these events, these big comps?
Yeah, if you could see my room right now, it looks like a fly fishing explosion. It's about
Right.
halfway.
Is that what it looks like? So you're 2 days out. Are you fully organized and ready to go 2 days, or do you still got a lot of work to do?
Yeah, I've been in panic mode for like the past
Yeah.
month, but things are organized. They just need to be put in a bag. But yeah, I've been prepping for the last 8 months, and a lot of that is fly tying.
This is awesome. And you do a lot of. You mentioned Fulling Mill. Talk about some of your patterns because I know you have some other name patterns out there.
Yeah.
Yeah. What do you have going there? The Silver Surfer, right, is one of them.
Yes, that's an awesome drake pattern. I fished that on a river in Colorado that gets some really awesome drake hatches. That's another searching pattern for me in the summer. And then, yeah, I have like a standard, kind of like a competition caddis. It's synthetic materials, holds up nymphs really well, and also fishes standalone on its own pretty well. And yeah, they're just, I'd say with fly tying, like if you're super serious about it, you pick up so many tidbits from people over the years. So those are just kind of my renditions of what works for me.
Yeah, what works. Do you fish the much? Have you fished the stoneflies, the salmon flies, any of that stuff over your career?
Yeah, yeah. In high school, I used to hike into the Colorado River and fish the stonefly hatch. It's awesome. That's a place where we're not fishing a three weight, and
No,
yeah,
that's the difference, right? Yeah, you don't need a three weight. You're going big.
yeah, exactly. So I don't want people to take that out of context. Like only fish a three weight. Like there's a time and a place for every setup.
Yeah. And the stuff you're talking about, and that's why I think like the question at the start, we had a listener ask like, okay, competition dry fly, and what you're focusing on is these places, especially in Europe, are super heavily fished, right? Pressured, so you've got to be subtle, and you can't just throw size 14, right? You got to go super. Is that kind of why you're going with the 10 foot and all the super light stuff?
Yeah, yeah. I'd say like for the most part, the fishing in Europe makes the fishing in the United States look like child's play.
Hmm.
I mean, there even like a recreational angler over there would come over to the US and like clean shop.
No kidding.
Yeah.
So so the anglers just they're general they're just betting just because the fishing is harder over there in Spain and France.
It's harder and they're not fishing orange bobbers and like they're fishing competition techniques over there. Even your standard fly fisherman you'd grab off the street. no hate for indicator fishing. I do it all the time. But
Yeah.
yeah, they're just I think yeah, they're used to harder scenarios.
Yep, gotcha. Okay. You mentioned caddis. I always love whenever I hear caddis because that's always been a challenge for me at times. What does that look like for you? Do you have some confidence caddis patterns that are out there anywhere?
Yeah, absolutely. The one with fulling mill's great. That's like kind of more of an indicator dry. And then yeah, I tie some super simple CDC caddis flies. I really try not to overcomplicate fly tying. Just keep it,
Yeah.
anything with more than three materials, I'm not going to tie it.
Yep. Okay, so the caddis, the foaling mill, what was the name of that one again?
I think that's just called my new age caddis.
Yeah, the New Age. So that one is describe that one a little bit. What does that one look like, and when would you fish it? How would you fish it?
Yeah, that kind of came about through guiding and my own fishing, but it's got a blended synthetic wing, so kind of multicolored. I got pretty fed up with like elk hair caddis getting sucked under the water, so I think that synthetic materials hold dry fly floating a little better, and it's
Mm.
got a nice high vis post, and then instead of hackle, I put CDC on there.
Yeah, okay. Instead of hackle, that's CDC. So you have yeah, it's a and what is the wing material?
That's just like blended poly yarn.
Yeah, just polyurethane. Yep. Gotcha. Wow. So yeah, it looks like a kind of not really like I mean, it's similar in profile to Elker caddis, but it doesn't have the tuft. What do you think on the Elker caddis? That little tuft, do you think that has any benefit? Your fly doesn't have that tuft, right?
No,
What is that tuft imitating?
I have no idea. I think fish are pretty dumb, and
Yeah.
I think if you have a good drift, it's gonna usually trump whatever fly you have. That's applicable for everything.
This is great. I love that you showed this fly because the Elker caddis has always been a pain for me. I've never really liked that fly. Has never really worked that. I mean, it's worked obviously, but how important do you think the flies are with dry fly fishing? How critical is this, like compared to say nymph fishing or any other thing? Do you think, it sounds like it's not that important.
I'd say the flies with dry fly fishing are more important than the flies you would fish nymphing, but I think, when we fish them, we're fishing on longer tapered leaders. So our leaders are about 20 foot long, 18 to 20 foot long. And the main thing is it's reducing your drag. So I think a lot of people, if you're fishing a standard 9 foot leader to your elk or caddis or whatever you're fishing, the moment your fly line starts dragging, it's going to yank on that dry fly. And so with these longer leaders, you're protecting your dry fly from drag because you have a lightly weighted dry fly line. And yeah, I mean, I think dry fly fishing is so complex because you can get micro drag that your eye doesn't even register. But, you know, when you see fish come up and sniff your dry fly, it's probably not the fly. There's something going on there with drag.
Right. With drag. How do you avoid the drag? Is that something is the long lead is that typically is a 20-foot leader a typical length for your leaders?
Yeah, 20 foot is max for me, and then I grease it up with gel fly floating, and then obviously the smaller tippet sizes in the 6.5, 7x, 8x range.
Okay. And so the fly float that's greasing up the line, that's something you're always doing?
Always, and I fish fluorocarbon for my tippet, so I know that goes against like mono floats, fluoro sinks. It does sink, and that's what I want it to do is sink
Oh,
under the water
right.
a little bit.
Exactly. Yeah, you want it actually everything else is floating, but that gets down and so it's not maybe spooking the fish a little bit. Is that casting a shadow potentially, something like that?
Yeah, I mean, there are smart fish out there that will pick up on that stuff, but when you get into 7x tippet sizes, like fish can't see that.
No. What's the largest fish you think maybe you've landed or you've hooked on seven? I mean, can you land pretty big fish on 7X, 8X?
Yeah,
You
big
can.
big
Yeah.
fish, upwards of 25 inches. Yeah.
Right. And just using and that's where the rod, the tip. Is the tip or is the Euro nymphing rods are known. Well, you can talk better than I can, but describe that. What is the tip flex? What is the dry fly rod? Is it really a soft tip?
It's a softer tip on Joe's rod. It's not an overly stiff dry fly rod. I'd say pretty medium flex. But yeah, the tip matters for sure. You know, you just don't want a rod that you're instantly breaking fish off like a broomstick rod.
Right. Okay. And then once you hook a fish, let's say you have a nice fish on here, what is your recommendation? How do you landing that fish? How are you turning it so you don't break them off? Or what would be your just general tip for somebody?
Yeah, I think a lot of people think like comp guys are just fighting these fish for like 15 minutes on 7X, and it's really the opposite. I mean, when you get to a point, especially in comps, like that's the whole thing is to land the fish as fast as you can. So I think if I were to hook a fish upwards of 25 inches on 7X today, I'd be puckered up a little bit, not gonna lie. Uh, that's it's never fun.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's rod angles, letting them get their big run out and then getting them up to the surface and just letting them do the work for you. And once you turn their head once, you just need to capitalize on the net job.
Right. Okay. So yeah. So let them, if they're going to run, make that first run, and then get them up higher, keep them higher in the surface column, and then turn them kind of in towards the bank. Keep the rod tip low. Turn them down. Is it downstream? Do you want them down below you or above you?
Never below me. Always
Never below you.
above. Yeah.
Gotcha. So always above. So you turn them always above, your rod tips pointed down, and now you're just turning them in towards the bank, and you have your net.
Yeah. I've got a funny story about keeping fish above you. When we were in Slovakia for Worlds fishing for grayling, they have these funky shaped mouths and they don't hold hooks very well. So you'd hook a grayling and then run like 20 feet below it so you could get it so you could net it, like have them coming down to you, because you would
Oh,
drop
right.
almost every single one if you were
Oh,
fighting
no
them side
kidding.
by side.
Gotcha. So you hook them and then you run down so that you can get right below them and basically drop them into your net.
Yeah, absolutely.
Oh man, that's cool. That's definitely a species on the bucket list, probably for a lot of people listening. Is the European grayling, right? Because
Yeah.
they're different. They're different than the Arctic grayling, I've heard.
They're finicky little creatures and weird. They're just flat out weird.
Yeah, nice. No, this is awesome. I think that again, this conversation is great because you're saying a lot of stuff that I think people aren't thinking about necessarily, right? I think it's
Yeah.
perfect. What else would you say? We're gonna probably take it out of here in a little bit, but any other high level, tips if somebody's listening now, and they're thinking, man, I really want to do better with dry flies. I really struggle. What else would you give them kind of on some tips there?
Yeah. I mean, I would say, just throw your program out the window and start from square one.
Yeah.
Just be different. If you tie flies, experiment with wing colors. If you like fishing hackled parachute dry flies, that's great. Like what I do maybe isn't applicable for everyone. And I would say, especially on the world's team, we all fish different, right? Everyone's got different rods and different leaders and whatnot. So whatever I do might work for me, but it might not work for you, right? So that's where you adapt and you say, okay, I'm going to use a little bit of what he said, and then I'm going to try my own little thing, right?
Right. Yeah,
Um,
exactly.
but yeah, I would say the biggest thing is eliminating drag and lengthening your leader for dry flies. I would say if you're not comfortable fishing a 20-foot leader, start with 12 and then work yourself up to 15.
Yeah. So longer has been, that's mainly because of the giving, why is the longer leader? Why is that helping you? Why is a 20 better than a 15?
Yeah, so when I fish dry flies, there's no mending. So I don't
Oh, right.
I don't have to mend with the way, like we're casting this in a way where it creates like kind of a hook. So you're not casting that dry fly and laying it out perfectly straight. That's like the opposite of what you want to do. You want your dry fly to land to the left or to the right of you, and then the tippet will actually crumple in a little stack, and then the leader hits the water, and then when your leader starts gaining momentum down the river, then it pulls on the tippet stack, but your flies in its place. So like I can wiggle my rod tip and mess around with it in the air, and my fly's not going to move.
Oh, wow. So you're getting a lot of many seconds on the water with you having to do nothing. It's just the flies. You made the cast. What is that cast called? What would you call that cast?
I'd call it a hook cast.
Hook cast.
I think Devin calls it a J hook.
Oh, J hook. Okay. So you're J hooking it to get it in position essentially so you don't have to mend or do anything and you'll just, yeah, let it do its thing.
Yeah, I will. I am big anti mender. I will not mend because if you're in a competition and you need one fish to win and you mend at the wrong time and you don't hook that fish, then that's a shame for you. But the whole reason of this platform is you don't need to mend. I mean, not saying I never do, but you don't need to do that big classic swing to mend everything back upstream.
That's it. Wow. Yeah. The mend always feels like you're always afraid. You mend and you're like, oh man, it never
Yeah,
feels really good, right? And we've had a lot of people talk about, the reach cast probably is the one cast we've heard people say a lot, the reach
sure,
cast. And it
sure.
sounds like this J hook is a little like a reach cast, kind of a different type of reach cast.
Yeah, yeah, you're correct. And I know I'm not the only one that's mended at the wrong time and missed a fish. And you're like, oh man, why did I do it?
Or not even known it, right? Like how many
Yeah.
fish did you not even known you actually, they never even saw the fish that was coming up.
Or you see a fish trying to come up and eat your fly and you mend it and you pull it right away from them. You're like, oh, there we go.
Yeah. Right. Wow. Awesome. Well, this is good. I guess maybe talk a little about, as we take it out of here, your program. So you do some guiding, newageflyfishing.com. Talk about that. What do you guys, do you have availability? What types of clients are you attracting out there?
Yeah, I will say I have zero availability.
Okay, so I figured I could tell after this conversation that, you know what I mean, that it's going to be hard to track you down. But yeah, what would people do if they go to your site? What would be the recommendations to kind of figure out how to get a hold of you?
Yeah, I can get them in touch with some youth team kids here, and some awesome Colorado guides that know competition tactics. I guided all 4 years in college, and I absolutely loved it. I work a full-time job now, and with the amount of competitions I have to do and practice and training, there's very few guide days that I have available, and most of them are long-term clients of mine. But yeah, if anyone did want a guide trip, there's a rare chance that I might have some time or I'd find a suitable replacement for me.
Yeah, perfect. No, I think that would be a good. That would be well worth it to find somebody you'd recommend would be great. So, what about let's a couple of these ones we'll get out of. These are just kind of typical questions we get a lot of here. There's lots of flies out there. How are you preparing? Building your box. Let's just stick on the dry flies. So,
Sure.
are you getting what is your dry fly box preparation? What does it look like? Do you have one box, like 20 boxes? How do you prepare?
I got a lot of boxes of flies.
Yeah.
I'll start there, and not all of
Yeah.
them even come with me on a trip or even make it to the river, but I tie kind of like stock boxes. So I'll tie my flies in there, and then when I get to a comp, it's like, oh, this caddis with the little green ass is working pretty well. And then I'll go look at my box. I'm like, cool, I got those in a 18, a 16, and a 14. Let's grab a couple sizes and give them the whole platter. In terms of sizes, yeah, anywhere from 22 to 14 is really my go-to size range, and they're all on barbless dry fly hooks.
Yep. What hooks do you like?
I use the Fulling Mill dry fly hook. That's
Okay.
that's my favorite, and I use that for nymphs as well. But that's a phenomenal dry fly hook.
Okay. Perfect. Awesome. Yeah. So 22s to 14s. What do you think is a common mistake you see? You probably see lots of anglers out there fishing. Do you like dry fly fishing? What's something common you see, whether that's comp or just general fishermen?
It's just the lack of length on the leader, or
Yeah.
the fly is way too big. Like, I love fishing hoppers in the summer. Like, I'll go out of state and I'll fish hoppers on 4X all day long or in Elk Hair Caddis. Like, it's great. But for most scenarios, it's probably not going to be the thing you're going to do for the whole day, or at least for technical dry fly fishing. So I'd say just downsizing flies and lengthening the leader past 10 feet would be an awesome starting point.
Yep. That's right. And can you go too small on dry flies? I mean, why
Yeah.
not? You can. You can. So 24, you don't have to go like super duper small all the time.
No, yeah. I mean, my standard size is like I fish a size 16 in the summer, all summer long. That's my jam. But yeah, when you think about smaller flies, less surface area, easier to have more drag on them. You know, bigger flies are gonna help aid in that whole scenario.
Yep, gotcha. What about we'll leave maybe add one more casting tip here. I think that's another big struggle for people, right? Casting, you might have some wind, trees, stuff like that. What is your maybe talk about your casting? Are you a person that's always practicing your cast? Are you, what's that look like for you?
I do not practice casting.
No?
No, I yeah, I don't know. I mean, I guess just growing up around in the competition scene from a young age, like for lakes, you need to be able to drop an 80-foot cast on a dime, and it kind of just trained me to get great. Saltwater fishing has trained me to get
Okay.
uh, good at casting.
Yeah. Who was your original person? Was it your grandfather that taught you how to cast the first fly rod, or your dad?
No, no, he was a spin fisherman, so I was self-taught for
Oh, you were.
I think a year or two, and then yeah, hopped on the youth team right away, and that's where
That's where it came.
I started learning things. Yeah.
Yeah. So you were self-taught, so you probably had all sorts of things that weren't great. Then you hop on the youth team and you have somebody, some big, great caster is teaching you how to do it.
Yeah, I had a lot of things wrong with my game, and I'm always improving, right? Yeah, there's,
Yeah.
no one's ever the best, and I try to stay humble and just, I'm always
Yeah.
trying to just improve my game.
What do you think is there a tip you were given back then? Do you remember early on that really made the difference on your cast?
Um,
Or was that too long ago to remember back in those days?
I don't know. I'd say for dry fly fishing, it's do the opposite of a river runs through it. If anyone's ever
Oh yeah.
watched
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
I think you can cast too slow, but you can't cast too fast in terms of rod speed.
Oh, really? You can't cast too fast.
Yeah, the way we're casting these rigs is not at a typical rod pace. It's much faster than you would expect.
Okay. And that's because why is that? Because it's so light? Because it's lighter than your typical?
Yeah, yeah, you kind of just need that energy to flow through the rod to the leader to the tippet pretty quickly. So I'd honestly compare it more to like a nymph cast, in a way.
Yeah, right. If you're on the water and you see what you think is the spot, you get that fish for the gold, and you got to make it. Can you make that? How within inches, or were you making it within a pie plate? What's your focus? How are you getting pinpoint on that?
Yeah, in my head, I like to think I can do it every time, but that's just never the scenario. But yeah, I mean, you try to lead them a little bit, but yeah, you try to drop it on a dime size thing every time.
And is that partly? I always feel like that's not always easy, right? Sometimes you go too far, sometimes too short. But how do you do that? How do you? Is that just kind of? I always think like you're on fire, right? Like these sports
Mhm.
athletes. So you must have been in that situation, right? Where you're just like hitting, boom, everyone is perfect, 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 and then have you been in that moment a few times?
Yeah, I call it the flow state,
Yeah, the
and
flow.
that's when things are going really, really, really well. And I would say for people to practice is the water is lava, so don't let your fly line hit the water, and then don't even give yourself a false cast. Like,
Right.
you will get a lot better at dry fly fishing if you tell yourself, okay, I'm gonna give myself one cast for this fish, and you don't do it, then it shortens your window, right? It's kind of like golf. The less swings you can make, the better.
Right. Yeah. Is that what golf? The less swings. Oh, right. Like on the course. Yeah. The less
Yeah.
strokes, the better your score. So so water is lava, and try to make your cast without a false cast. So come back and that's a great. Even if it's a 60-foot cast, see if you can do it.
Yeah, and if you botch it, like, give yourself a little 30-second break and pretend you're doing it again, and
Yeah.
give yourself one cast.
Cool. Do you have to ever do the false cast to dry your fly off, or are you using certain flies and everything you use? You don't really worry about drying your fly off.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, I'll do the little kind of whip around, dry it off, and then bring it in close to me, and use whatever dry fly floating
Yeah,
I have on me for the day. But absolutely on that.
that's it. Okay. Awesome, Jack. Well, I think, again, we want to keep talking to you all day here, but I think we'll respect your time and let you get out of here, and maybe we'll hope to talk to you later about some more of these techniques. We'll send everybody out. We said at the start, newageflyfishing.com, and on, I guess, Instagram, Jack Arnot. Is that the best place to find you?
Yeah, that's perfect.
Okay. Cool. Well, thanks again for all your time today. We'll definitely look forward to keeping in touch. And yeah, we'll be rooting you on at the Worlds. How can people follow this? You guys are going to be in a couple days. I guess it'll probably be over by the time this episode goes live. But can they watch video replays? Where could they see how you guys did?
No video. I know on Facebook there's links to everything through the Team USA page usually, and then on standard Google or whatnot, there's a place called FIPS Moosh. And that's the governing board that runs everything, and that's where they'll have the point totals and everything stacked up.
Gotcha. Yeah, it's interesting. Why do you think it is that fly fishing isn't, on ESPN with golf and baseball, everything else? What is it? What is it about it?
I mean, bass fishing's on TV, but
Yep.
we're hoping to have it televised one day, and
Yeah.
people would have a blast watching it. Like
It should be.
these things, it would be super cool, and I think we're lobbying towards that one of these days.
I was gonna say we got time. There's only we got a year now. The Idaho Falls is right around the corner. It seems like the perfect time going back to near where Jack Dennis first started, Team USA. You know what I mean? Like it seems like this is the time to bring it on, and maybe we could work on that a little bit. And I know there's actually I mentioned Chris Korich, the casting instructor. He told me I maybe shouldn't say this, but he told me that they are working. The Olympics are coming to LA, I think, in
Yep.
a few years, and he was saying they're trying to get it potentially casting comp at the Olympics.
Yeah,
I'll have to
same
make sure same for Team USA.
Yeah, there's a lot of lobbying, and it'd be cool if it works out. And I think Glade might even be trying to get portions of our worlds televised because he's hosting and putting together the worlds, which is a huge undertaking. But I'm sure it's part of the conversation somewhere.
Oh, cool. Yeah, we'll have to check in with Glade. Awesome, Jack. Well, I think we'll leave it there for today. And thanks again for all your time. And I look forward to seeing how you guys do out there.
Yeah, Dave, really appreciate it, and thanks for having me on.
If today's episode got you thinking differently about dry fly fishing, if you're curious what it takes to fish at the highest level, you can head over to newageflyfishing.com right now to learn more about Jack's approach. Let him know you heard this podcast. Let him know you're interested. And if you're interested in a guide trip, although Jack doesn't have availability, it sounds like he's got some connections to get you rolling here. We're definitely going to have Jack back on the podcast down the line. So appreciate you for stopping in today. We've got some big trips going out in this part of the world. Idaho Falls. We've got a Stillwater School. We've got a Lodge at Palisades trip going. We got all sorts of good stuff going. I appreciate you for hanging in to the very end, and I appreciate you for checking out the Travel Podcast today. I hope you can live that dream trip this year, and I hope you can get off the beaten path and experience that road less traveled. We'll talk to you soon.